Bob Bozarth and Bobby Jackson. Gentlemen?
We're now coming to the podium. Listening to the website, Chapter Roses Candidates for Conventions and more in here on KTLA. AM 1470 as well as streaming online at KTLAAM.com and your free KTLA app. Now back to the forum.
All right, I think we're ready. Welcome, gentlemen. I'm going to start first with Bob Bozarth. Bob, the use of reserves has occurred in each of the past several years. How have you or will you help balance the county's budget without relying on the reserves?
Well, it's one of my priorities to get involved in this county budget. One of the situations with it right now, from my perspective, is you can look at the budget to a certain extent, but unless you get a hold of that big black book that goes with it, it's really difficult to figure out exactly where we're at. So right now, I'm kind of taking the opinions of people that are currently in office and other people that I've talked to at the courthouse, asking them questions about the budget. What my plan is on the budget is I would like to go over that doggone thing thoroughly, and then I would like to take it to an outside source, my own personal accountant, and I'd like to get a second opinion on the budget. To the best of my knowledge, and I hope I'm somewhere close on these numbers, it takes about $8.5 million a month to run this county. And right now, if these figures are correct, I think we've got about a $7 million reserve. And I understand, actually I just heard recently that it was brought up that gives us a 3-month that'll give us a 3-month in case something happens, like a major earthquake, disaster, that kind of stuff. I don't think that's true, because if we're spending $8.5 million a month and we've only got a $7 million reserve, I think we're in a little bit more trouble than what we're thinking we're in. So it definitely needs to be looked into.
Thank you, Bob. And Bobby, same question for you. The uses of reserves has occurred in each of the past several years. How have you or will you help balance the county budget without relying on the reserves?
I think it's important to note that the budget is basically a moving target for Lewis County, as most budgets in businesses tend to be. It is true that we have used reserves to balance the budget every year. As far as hiring an outside accounting firm to take a look at our books, that's not going to happen. I can tell you right now that we take in a little more than $750,000 a year from the federal government, and I'm sure that figure is not quite accurate. But because we take that much money in every year, we automatically have an auditing process in place by the state. We are audited once a year regularly by the state. And also, I think that our locally elected auditor might have an issue with that, because that's his job, and he has a complete staff that takes care of that. And so when we began talking about these things, I went to speak with the auditor's office and talked to them just a little bit about the budget, the reserve. And one of the things that, I think one of the things we need to mention is that we're solvent in Lewis County. We really are. Do we have issues financially? Absolutely. We certainly do. We're losing our timber industry, and we're having to find real, honest ways of making up that money. And there's not any easy answers for any of this. But one of the things that they noted in one of the conversations that I had was that when we had the economic downturn in 2008 and we went in such a hard recession, of course it was really tough here in Lewis County. One of the things that was noted was that we did not have to go outside of the county to secure funds, where there were a lot of counties in this state that had to float loans just to do business. Lewis County did not have to do that. And that's because we do have a reserve. Now the reserve takes in, as I understand it, there's a couple of spikes a year from property taxes. And it gets built up from whatever the level is at this moment, whether it's $5 million, $7 million, whatever that number is, it will go to sometimes $10 million. Of course, when we see that, it's all good. We've got money in the reserve, but guess what? We've got bills to pay. And so that's where that money goes from there. And so it's always a moving target. Now, do we need to stop using reserves? Yeah, at some point we really do, but we're talking about a long-term commitment to getting that done, and we have to do that through sustainable wage jobs coming into our county. We have to do that through industry coming into our county. Industry will put money back into the county. Service-related organizations take it out. And so while we enjoy our restaurants and all of our service-related businesses, the key for us is finding sustainable wage industry that will put money back into this economy.
Thank you, Bobby. Bob, any rebuttal?
Yes, I certainly hope I didn't mislead anybody. My intention was not to have the taxpayers pay for my accountant to look at that budget. And as I would pay for that out of my own pocket. I want to make that perfectly clear. There's a transparency issue here if what Bobby's saying is true. Don't we, the taxpayers, have an opportunity to know our budget? Don't we have that right? I don't think you need to be a commissioner. I think any citizen should be able to go down and go through that budget at any time they want. And the other thing too, that on that subject, I think we're blocking our transparency. It seems, I did a lot of research here over the last year or so. Every time I go into the courthouse to look up general information, I need to fill out a Freedom of Information Act to get it. And I don't think we need to go that far. We need to make provisions for our citizens to get involved. And if they want some information, for crying out loud, they better get it if I become a commissioner.
Thank you, Bob. Bobby?
I would disagree completely with my opponent here, and the reason I say that is because we are constantly, and I'm not a part of the county, but I've been to more meetings, folks, in the last 18 months than I've been in my entire life, and I can tell you one thing that is very evident. Our county wants people to come in and sit down through the budget meetings. They are continuously invited to come and do so. You have the opportunity at any time to come in and sit down in a public meeting, because every meeting that is called by the commissioners, when there is a quorum, is a public meeting. I've sat through some of these budget meetings. They are not secret. There is no problem with transparency there. We want people on board with what's going on with the county. Now, as far as filling out Freedom of Information Act, I can't answer that. I do know that there are public disclosure files that you can, or excuse me, there's public disclosure forms that you can fill out to get information that you might need. But I've got to tell you, I don't see anything secret about the budget process here in Lewis County, because we're constantly asking people to come in and take a look at what the numbers are. And we want input. We want people to give us input into the budget. We want people to give us input on what are the ideas that we can draw from throughout the community as to how we turn this thing around. So nobody's hiding anything. They're all out there for everybody to see.
Thank you.
Bobby Jackson, we're going to stick with you on this one. Question on flooding. The draft report from the State Department of Ecology includes 5 alternatives when accounting for the option of doing nothing. Which of the options, which include a dam, levees, or vacating portions of the floodplain, do you support at this point, and why?
Well, obviously we can't do anything. We can't just not do anything. To do that sends us back 20 years. And as I understand it, here in Lewis County, we generally can expect a major flooding event just about every 10 years. And we are on the verge of hitting the 10-year anniversary of the 2007 flood. I would like to think that the rain, the heavy rains that we had back in the springtime, where we basically dodged a bullet, folks. We got a couple of days of good weather that allowed the rivers to go down. I'd like to think that that was our event right there, and the good Lord spared us from that. But it's not a question in Lewis County about if we'll ever flood again. It's when we will flood again. And so I'm fully supportive of option 1. That is the water retention system in the PL area in the Willapa Hills. After meeting with Jay Vanderstoot, getting a briefing from him, that is the best option that we have, and also fish habitat. We've got to work all those things out. The thing that you understand when you in leadership is that you're not going to make everybody happy. No matter what you do, not everybody's going to be happy. You have to take the best information that you have available to you, and you have to act on that. You have to make a decision that's going to be for the good of the entire county, and you got to own that decision. And you got to go out and you got to support that. We are on, there's more to this in my mind than just the fact that we are on the verge of possibly 5 to 7 years out of being able to permit this process. We've got $500 million that Senator John Braun has told us that we could have that allocated next year by the state. There's more going on here than just that. It's not just about us being able to mitigate this. It really ultimately, and you've got to forgive me folks, I'm in radio and I'm in marketing, and this is where my mind goes, we need to send a message to Olympia, and we need to send a message throughout this entire state. Lewis County is working together on something. We're getting rid of that whole concept and that perception that all we do is fight amongst ourselves. We've seen that go on. It's time to change that perspective, and this, with the flood mitigation project, will give us that opportunity to change that so that industry can look at us again and go, hey, wait a minute, those folks are working together. Let's go give them another look. So I support the first option.
Thank you. Bob Bozarth will give you the same question, and I'll reread it here. The draft report from the State Department of Ecology includes 5 alternatives when accounting for the option to do nothing. Which of the options, which include a dam, levees, or vacating portions of the floodplain, do you support at this point, and why?
Well, that report that you're talking about is 1,000 pages. I have not had the time to go through that report. I hope to get some time this weekend so I can study the doggone thing a little bit better before I can come out with an absolute opinion. But, you know, I'm going to take a different perspective. I am the only guy up here with some questions on, let me start out with this. All of these studies are centered around the 2007 flood event. At that time, we had 22 inches of water fall out of the sky all at once. We had at least 2 debris dams break almost simultaneously. It sent an 18-foot wall of water down the Chalas River. It tore up over 2,000 homes and businesses in Lewis County. I lost my business to it as well, right down there on State Street. I'm very sympathetic to everybody that suffered through that '07 flood. But you know, it comes down to a cost versus benefit situation as well. We have been studying it since the 30s. And we spent a lot of money studying this doggone thing. If we could have the money we spent studying it, we'd probably already have that dam up above PL. At no expense to the taxpayers. The other thing is that I'm concerned about. If you put the dam in, according to the information I've got at this time, it's going to reduce the water table at Mellon Street by 3 feet. Most of the people that went through that '07 flood were 8 or 9 feet underwater. So, really, does it matter? If you're underwater by 6 foot or 9 feet, or even 2 feet, you still have some pretty serious damage in your home. You're going to replace that sheetrock 8 foot, no matter what. So I've got some concerns about the flood, or the dam. And I've got some major concerns when we start talking about buying property on the Newaukum River, and I can't even believe we're talking about that, to be honest with you. Displacing people that have lived out there for, lots of them, you know, have homesteaded there. I don't think you're going to have a lot of success talking some of those people out of giving up their land. So now you're in an eminent domain situation. I'm the guy that wants to protect personal property rights in Lewis County.
Any rebuttal?
Yes, sir. The option that my opponent is talking about is one of the options that's on the table, but that has absolutely nothing to do with the first option that we were talking about, the water retention system. And the other thing that I would say to that is that this is not the only project that's going to be done. Currently, we have local flood mitigation projects that are going on right now, and you can drive around our community. I know of one right down here, Dillenbaugh, is that the name of the creek down here? We have a project that's getting ready to get started there. I believe there's one up at Rush Road. There have been other ones that we're getting ready to see these things started. And so what we have to understand is that with this mitigation system in the Willapa Hills, that's going to go along with the stuff that we're doing down here in the valley right now. So you put all of those things together, And then we've got a very good chance at avoiding another major flooding event like we had in 2007. To the point about purchasing property, that has been suggested. The thing is that a number of people were spoken to about that own property in these particular areas. They're talking about completely redoing the landscape here. And several people have said, well, I might be up for that, but to this point, nobody has stepped up to say, I'll sell my property. So I don't even think that's a consideration. I think that the retention system, along with what we're doing now here locally, that is our best option. And actually, as it was said here just a few moments ago, we're within 7 years of the thing being permitted and also work being started on this. We are closer now than we've ever been before. And quite frankly, folks, we dare not do this. We dare not. That's the reason I'm supporting it.
Any final rebuttal, Bob?
Yeah, just a quick one. I think Bobby said that Senator Braun could get us $5 million. We're talking in the billions, folks. We're talking $1.2, $1.8 billion. And we're living in a time when the federal government is $20 trillion in debt. The state of Washington spends more money every day than what it takes in. I think we've got to start taking a serious look at being fiscally responsible and making people accountable. A lot of us didn't choose to put a business up in a flood zone or build a house in a flood zone. And a lot of this stuff happened years ago. But a lot of us don't need to pay for, I'm going to tell you, if you're going to put it up in a flood zone, as far as I'm concerned, you're at your own risk. Be responsible for your own actions.
Thank you.
Okay, so first question is for Bob. What policy changes or investments are necessary to encourage broader economic development?
Okay. We've got to go back to our roots. And the roots in Lewis County came from the timber industry, they came from the farming industry. And our timber industry is totally depressed. It has been getting worse ever since the Endangered Species Act was signed into, and that was back in '74, I believe. So we used to be a thriving economy. We used to have more millionaires in Lewis County per capita than just about any place in the United States. And when that happened, and they keep coming at us, we started to lose a lot of the revenue that's how we support our schools. That's how we support our roads. That's one of our big issues with our budget right now is we're losing those timber dollars. Just like Edna pointed out, we used to get $4 million, now we're down to $700,000. That's not going to fly. I've been working with a lot of organizations, Coalition of Western States, the American Lands Council. I've been working with commissioners in Skamania County that are even in worse shape than we are, because 80% of their land is controlled by the federal government. And I've been watching what's going on in Utah. They're passing legislation, or they're attempting to pass legislation in Utah right now that will give the states, the federal government will give us back control of our own property. And it'll be managed by the states at the local level. That's one thing we need to really strive to get done. DNR just announced a couple weeks ago, they're going to take yet another 10 to 24% of the timber out of production due to the marbled burlap. And my question is on that is, where's the science behind the marbled burlap? By their own admission, they don't even know what that doggone thing does when it goes back out to sea. Okay, so we've got all this timber here that we're not going to recreate on. We're not going to log it. We're not going to mine it. And what's going to happen? There's going to be a forest fire. That's going to burn out. And we've lost all that revenue up in smoke. And you know what? That marble millet don't have a place to nest anymore either. So my concentration is also going to be on pushing back on bureaucracy. We're infiltrated by the federal government, the state government. They just keep coming and coming and coming. we're going to have to start pushing back. If you want to see this economy boom again, then we have got to move bureaucracy out of the way, let the private sector breathe.
Bobby, same question to you. What policy changes or investments are necessary to encourage broader economic development?
I am in full agreement with the idea of having the federal government return back to the states their own lands to manage. I think we can do a much better job of that. And I would agree with the point that if we can do that, we would be able to weed the garden, as it were, to continue to sustain our natural renewable resource, which timber is. But that is a long-term process that we will have to go to the state level. We will have to deal with legislators on. I'm for the principle, but I work in a business where you deal with attrition, and you have to have a plan B. I have businesses that have been on with me at my job at KELA KMT Radio for a number of years, and they're solid business, and we've grown that business. But there are days that come when those business owners will sit down with me and say, we're going to make a change here. And all of a sudden, whatever that amount of money is that I had coming into my business, and I am in business for myself by doing that, that's gone. So what's my plan B? Do I fight to get that business back? Absolutely. Do I go after it and continue to cultivate that relationship and to see if we can't retain that business? You better believe it, because that's what I do for a living. That's what we have to do with the timber industry. But there's a certain reality we have to face here. We have been losing our timber industry. And since the downturn in the economy in 2008, corporate America has changed. The industry has changed. And I don't know that we will ever see the day again when the timber industry is our primary industry here. Can it be an industry that we can work with? Absolutely, and we need to keep working towards that. But my question has always been, what is our backup plan? And so in my mind, our backup plan has to be, first of all, industry. Visiting out at the industrial park at TransAlta, as it was mentioned a few moments ago, we have a 25-acre plot out there that it's spade ready. It's ready to turn dirt. We're ready to put an industry in there. And I had a great meeting with Alan Rowe, who's the director out there. And the vision of IPAT is that they only want industry to come into this area that is going to put money back into our economy. They really only want industry that's going to employ our people. Now, there's a reality to that there may be people coming in from the outside, but wait a minute, that's good stuff, because that means people will be looking to build homes, and they'll be looking, that'll put sales tax dollars back into our coffers. We need to think about those things. We need to think about broadband technology all over our county, because that will connect us with the rest of the world. It will connect us with other major industries. And I'm telling you right now, that will be the thing that will pull us out of this if we will focus on that.
Okay, Bob, your rebuttal?
That a 1 minute rebuttal?
Yes.
I'm going to pass then.
Bobby, your rebuttal?
Nothing rebuttal.
Gentlemen, I can say you both have a fine first name, so. Bobby, my question concerns the land use planning and land division process along with building permit process. Do you feel the current system regarding land use regulations and the permitting process is understandable and consumer friendly to the public and is delivered in a good customer service way? And if not, what can be done to improve this process?
Wow, that's a big question. I have not enough information to give you a very educated answer on that, but I will attempt to answer it this way. I know that there have been issues between the courthouse and specifically the city of Chehalis and the port of Chehalis as far as the UGA is concerned. There's an interlocal agreement in place right now that has not made anybody happy. And that's one of the things we're going to have to look at. Do I think it needs to be a fair process across the board? Yes, sir, I do. I think it needs to be fair for both of our major communities here, as well as everyone else in the county. As far as the permitting process is concerned, I met with a group of people here a number of months ago, and at that time, I quoted a conversation that I'd had with a local developer. And in a conversation with me, they made this statement. They said that, when you go into the permitting office, there are 50 things you know you're going to have to do. They know that immediately. Don't like them, but they get it, and they know they're going to have to do that. The problem that they ran into was when they came back after doing the 50, all of a sudden they found out they had 51, 52, 53, and 54. I was able to have a great conversation with our community development director, Lee Napier. And I'll tell you something about this lady. She has my respect because she's got a tough job to do. And we had, in the midst of that conversation, I told her exactly what this developer said. Lee has, her vision and her goal is to streamline our permitting process. She began that with a code scrub, a young man that they just hired, Fred Evander. Is that right, Fred Evander? Great guy. He got in there, he took a look at it. We found out we had 50 to 75 pages of duplications, repeats, those sorts of things. Those things have been eliminated. And at last count, I spoke to someone, one of the permit techs from the county that said permitting is up as of this moment. Now, is it enough? No, we've got more to do. And I can tell you that Lee's whole goal is to continue to streamline this, to continue to work hard at this, to make sure that we are more friendly to the permitting process. The other questions as far as land use, those are things that that's going to be a learned process for me. And one of the things is I bring a work ethic to this job. Most of the people in the courthouse have seen me 2, 3, 4 times a week. And they've gotten to the point they expect me to be at these meetings now. And so we've learned an awful lot, but there's a lot more for me to learn. And so I will hopefully at one point be able to come back with a better answer.
Bob, the same question. My question concerns land use planning and land division process, and along with building permit process. Do you feel the current system regarding land use regulations and permitting process is understandable and consumer friendly to the public and is delivered in good customer service? If not, what can be done to improve the process?
Well, as of the last 3 years, I've been heavily involved with the project out here on Jackson Villa Estates, just south of Chehalis. It's almost a cookie cutter thing. It's probably one of the largest construction projects going on, at least in the city of Chehalis right now. We're building, apartment houses. And I think we did 67 last year, and we're doing 76 this year, if I'm not mistaken. But the thing of it is, we'd already went through a lot of the processes, and one of the things that I had to shake my head a little bit about, before we could move a dirt plot down there, we had to bring in, since it was a SEPA project, we had to bring in people with the little buckets and the shovels, and they had to go down there and look for Indian artifacts, arrowheads, and that kind of stuff. So everybody, well, not everybody, but most of us that live in this area know full well that the county, numerous contractors, cities, have been using that for fill for years. So my question is, why do we go through this step? So what if they find an arrowhead? Where are they going to figure it came from? This is all fill material that they're sifting through. We need to do a better job of working with the different agencies and building some kind of a communications that has some common sense to it. The other part of this project was the last go around, which we started this year, the 76 units. We filed for our permits a year prior, at least a year, knowing that by this spring, when the weather turned nice, we wanted to put our people to work. We wanted to get in there and get the job done. We were set back yet another 3 months waiting for doggone permits. Now, I do have to agree with Bobby in regards to what's going on right now in the county as far as cleaning up and streamlining the permit process. And I think they are making good strides in the correct direction. And I'd like to thank them for that. But it can't stop at the county level. We need to have some meetings with the municipalities, try to get us all on the same page, particularly in the UGA areas. We're dealing with sometimes, well, at least two different entities. You're dealing with the county, or perhaps the city of Chehalis, or the city of Centralia, or the city of Winlock, whatever. But we're working under two different guidelines, and it gets confusing to a contractor. So we need to streamline that a little bit as well. I think we are going the right direction. But I still think that there's a lot of room for improvement, and we can do a better job. And we're gonna have to if we wanna get this thing going. If we wanna attract people from Thurston County and other parts of the state, if we wanna truly become the most business-friendly county in the state, this is something that we're gonna have to address.
Bobby, Mr. Bobby?
This begins with leadership, and it begins at the top. And if we're doing our job as county commissioners and we're setting policy, and our policy is that we want to move forward, we're going to be forward-thinking. And by being forward-thinking, that means that every department is going to have to get on the ball and begin to streamline their processes. When you start thinking about the budgets, I've been through a couple of those budget meetings, and I know that departments are looking for ways to shore up our expenses right now. That's because policy is being set by the leadership. The leadership needs to begin to push us in that direction so that we can continue the steady improvements that are being made in the permitting process, and they are being improved. We got a ways to go. And one of the things we have to keep in mind as far as that goes is that we're fighting through the RCW, we're fighting through overregulation. Washington is one of the most overregulated states. I work in radio for a living too. We're one of the most overregulated states in the nation. There was a report that came out in The Economist in 2014, and it graded states on their business friendliness and graded them on other things as well. In Washington, when it came down to overregulation, we scored a D. A D in overregulation. We were C plus perhaps in business friendliness, which is amazing to me because our neighbor directly to the east of us in Idaho, they scored A pluses in every category. That's the reason Idaho is thriving and we're not. And so we've got to work through all of those processes as well. And here's the thing about it. A county commissioner is bound by state law to implement state and federal policy. It's what a county commissioner has to do. Doesn't get a choice in that. So my goal would be, let's work through the system to change the system. If you've been pushing back too hard, guess what? They've got more horses than we've got, and they'll push us right back. So we work through the system in order to change the system. And so I think the permitting process at this point, there's been a lot said about that tonight, but I want everybody to know I believe that it is moving in a positive direction, and those are the things that we need to focus on as leaders for the next term as county commissioners.